that we can begin in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Please beware of overly enthusiastic and early fireworks displays. This has been a public service advisement from Fragments of Silicon.
Fragments of Silicon European interviews. Gollix made it on time this time. So
hooray!
Yeah. Anyway, time is ticking, so let's just get down to the brass tacks. This week we're welcoming Stav of Chronik Spartan, I believe.
That's right, Chronik Spartan.
Okay, that's a name.
Hey guys, it is a name, isn't it? It actually originates from my gamer tag from when I was a kid.
Okay, I suppose start by delving into that.
Well, to be honest, what happened was back when I used to be on the Xbox 360, I used to always want a really cool name like everyone else does. And I was really into Halo at the time. And also I'm half Greek, so I wanted to have just Spartan as my gamer tag. But as everyone knows, all the cool names are just taken straight away, aren't they? So I toyed around with some other ideas, like put a 7 as the T, and I was just never a big fan of putting numbers in a name to flesh it out. So then I thought, what else can I do to like still keep the Spartan in there, but make it a little bit more unique? And one of my favorite albums was Dr. Dre's The Chronik, and I just thought Chronik Spartan sounded pretty cool. So I gave it a go, and it was free. Actually, it was only free with the K, though, so Chronik with a K at the end. So that was my gamer tag. And then from that point on, it's just kind of stuck with everything I've done with computer games.
Right. I suppose that does flow into our next question is how did you get interested in games on both a professional and a personal level?
Well, to be honest, games have always been a part of my life. When I was a kid, I still remember begging my mum to get me a NES, NES. And when I got one of those on Christmas Day, playing Super Mario for hours on end, I was just absolutely hooked. And I always wanted like the next best console. I always got the one of the previous generation. So like the SNES had been out when I got the NES. And I think I eventually got a Mega Drive just as PlayStation was coming out. But I was always really, really a keen gamer. When I eventually did get a PlayStation when I was younger, I remember the first game I'd really, really got into was Metal Gear Solid. And at that point, I really just thought of computer games as just like, pick it up, maybe a bit of a puzzle game, a platformer, knock out 10, 20 minutes for a level in that. But when I played Metal Gear Solid, it just completely blew my mind for what a computer game could be. And I think that's when I really started to become passionate, because at that point, video games to me became an art form rather than just a pastime. And that's when I started getting into PC gaming and exploring a lot more of the story-driven games, RPG games. It all really came from that experience with Metal Gear Solid. And I guess from a professional level as well, I've always been into computers. I've always been like into the technical side of things, and I knew growing up that I wanted to have computers as a part of my life. So I took the natural route of looking at programming. So I followed that path into a career. But all the time, I always thought of video game development as something that I would have loved to have gotten into. Over here in the UK, it's maybe not as easy a thing. At least 20 years ago, 15, 20 years ago, it wasn't as easy a profession to get into. A lot of the big studios in the UK were more down south in London, and I'm based in Manchester, Liverpool now actually. So for me, it was always kind of just out of reach professionally. And I guess also from a technical perspective, not having really looked into the details of computer game development at a younger age, I didn't really understand the mechanics of how a game was made. So it always felt like that far away dream. That's something I'd never really get into. But it was about 3 or 4 years ago, just after I'd turned 30, and I thought to myself, I've gotten to the point now where I felt confident and comfortable enough in my programming skills that I wanted to look at more bigger challenges, things that maybe in the past eluded me. And from that point, I thought, well, I'm gonna actually see what it takes to make a computer game. I'm gonna see what parts of it I don't understand. And so I started the usual route I think that a lot of people maybe take these days, and using the internet and using Google to your advantage. And as I started looking into it more and researching and understanding the loops within games and how animation works frame by frame, it was all concepts that I actually did understand. I just hadn't really pieced it all together in my mind. And it was a lot simpler than I originally thought it was going to be. I think for some reason, because I was a kid and there was all these amazing games that I remember, I held it in such high esteem. I thought it was something that was far beyond my capabilities. But when I looked at it, each individual step of creating a video game wasn't that dissimilar at all to anything I'd done in my previous programming profession. So I thought I'm just going to give it a go. I'll just see if I can just look up some tutorials, follow some basic advice, and see if I can come up with some basic thing you could essentially call a video game. So my first attempt was looking at Flappy Bird and just seeing what was involved in making that. Probably the simplest game I could think of. If I couldn't do that, I couldn't do anything. So if I can do that, we'll take it from there. So I created a game called Cute Cat Splat, which is essentially just like a Flappy Bird clone, except you're a cat and you're running through fields and trying to avoid fences. And I managed to complete that in about a month, at the same time as having my 1-year-old son at the time and working a full-time job. And it was really that was the breaking point for me. That made me realize this is something I can do. Everything that was involved in making that game with steps and technical challenges I was comfortable with. I managed to fit it in a busy schedule, like I say, being a father, a husband, and having a full-time career. And I actually enjoyed it, to be honest, more than I've enjoyed any computer game I've played for the last 5 or 6 years. And that was because it felt like a challenge in itself. One of the biggest, most interesting parts of computer playing games to me is, one, the story, and two, like the challenge of trying to understand a puzzle or overcome some difficult, essentially puzzle, really. And to me, creating a computer game is the ultimate puzzle. And every little step and every improvement you make, every time you see a character on screen do something you programmed it to do, it's like you've taken another step on that challenge, like you got an extra level of experience from it. And after that first month, I was just absolutely hooked, and I just knew this is what I wanted to do with my life.
Oh.
Talked a lot then.
Indeed it is. And let's see. Well, was Glow like your first commercially released project?
Right, yeah. So Cute Cat Splat, I released it on Android. It just mostly I just let friends know about it, and I was quite new to Twitter as well at the time, and there was a couple of followers, I think fellow Android developers, that were interested in seeing what other people had done. But after creating Cute Cat Splat, I'd originally thought about the next project I wanted to work on, and I was originally thinking about another Android game. Whilst thinking about that, though, and thinking about what would be involved in, to take a step back, actually, I created Cute Cat Splat using libgdx, which is a code-heavy game engine. So it's got a lot of the libraries that are required, but most of the work is involved pure coding. That was good for me at the time because it meant I was able to do a lot of the coding on my mobile. So at break times, at lunch, I could just knock out a few lines of code on my mobile device, which meant I was able to be a lot more productive. But for the next project, which I wanted to be a more complete gaming experience, I didn't envisage that I'd be able to do that kind of game purely from a mobile device. It would, using a mobile screen and the touch screen controls is just way too finicky to actually develop a proper game. So I started looking at other options. And whilst doing that, I'd also gotten into the habit of listening to a lot of game development podcasts, watching a lot of GDC talks, all which just kind of ignited that fire in me and sparked that passion. They're kind of like triggers to me, if you know what I mean. Every time I'd drive home and I'd be listening to a podcast or I'd watch a quick GDC video at home, I'd immediately want to get straight into game development and try the next thing. And whilst listening to those, most of the focus was on PC games. And I guess a common pattern for me that you might pick up with things I'm saying is the enticement of things that maybe seemed like they were one level above my capabilities. And at the time I'd created, like I say, QCat Splat on a mobile device. I didn't really think of creating a PC game. It seemed like maybe that was a challenge too high. But again, after listening and doing a lot of research, I thought, actually, I'm going to make a PC game this time. I'm going to make a full gaming experience, beginning to end, with a vision of what I want the game to feel like, what I want it to be, what I want the player to experience. And I don't think you can really comfortably achieve that on a mobile device, not that immersion anyway. So I decided to look at PC game engine options. And I came across GameMaker Studio. So GameMaker Studio being a predominantly 2D game development environment, that was the path I was choosing. And the thing I wanted to achieve with Glow, when I started thinking, okay, what do I want from a 2D platform, or what would I enjoy playing, and what do I enjoy in games? It's always been that kind of wonder and that intrigue when things are hidden from the player. But what the experience or the example I always go back to is the first time I came across the hidden pipes in Super Mario. I'm not sure, I guess you remember when you could, I think it was the end of the second world, where you could, just before the end, you could jump up above the level, run over the top, and you could find some hidden pipes, and then they would take you to other areas of Super Mario World. And I just remember at that time, it blew my mind that there was something in the game that was hidden from me. It wasn't obvious, but through exploration, I could find it. And I always thought it was kind of a power almost that to the person who created that game, that they were able to create a world that you could experience, but they could also have mystery in it that you maybe didn't realize was there. And so for Glow, for me, I wanted to try and capture that feeling as the main game mechanic. So I thought about an environment whereby you couldn't see what was around you immediately, and almost every single turn, every jump you made, it was a new experience in terms of what was waiting for you there. You know, was it a safe place to go? Was it the path that you needed to follow, or was there even a hidden message or a hidden pickup to find? And I wanted the feeling whereby one player could go through and complete it relatively simply and basically find the path of least resistance, whereas another player who might be a bit more into exploring the levels could end up finding that a level that may seem like it was only the width of one screen may go on for 3 screens, and ultimately at the end of that there may be something for them to find there, and just to kind of reward that exploration, but also give that sense of intrigue and wonder as to what this game was hiding. So yes, that was to come back to the original point, that was my first commercial game. I released that on Steam.
Indeed. Like, And was this game only released for PC, or is there like a mobile version in the works?
It is currently only released for PC, and I've thought about creating a mobile version, because I do actually, I think it would actually work quite well on a mobile device. However, the issue I'm finding with it is there's a shooter mechanic involved, which enables you to shoot projectiles which glow, illuminate the area. And to do that, it uses the game uses quite a lot of the dual stick controls, and so I've found it really difficult to find a natural way to enable the player to have that same experience on a mobile device without just using the standard on-screen type of controls that we usually see, which I'll be honest, I'm not a big fan of. So I don't want to put it on mobile unless it feels the way I wanted it to feel, unless you can get a similar experience that you might get on the PC. And I'm currently struggling to find a way for the controls to work with that. But I'm still thinking of ideas, or maybe even modifying the mechanics of the game a bit. Because like I said, I do think it would be something that would translate quite well to mobile.
Well, let me try a different track. Have you considered releasing this game for the Nintendo Switch?
Yes, I have actually. At this point, when I thought about that, that was when I wished I'd used Unity, because Unity is straight away quite built to be able to release to many platforms, including the Switch. Right. Game Maker Studio, unfortunately, don't currently have a build option for Switch. Last time I checked, I check quite regularly, and the last time I checked, they are in talks, and I think one is coming out soon. And that is one of my main next targets with Glow. I would absolutely love to get it on the Switch. I bought one for my wife about a year ago, and I just keep on thinking how great it would feel playing Glow on the Switch. I think it would fit really well, so I'll keep an eye out for that.
Yeah. We had a developer on last year who was making a game in Game Maker, mentioning the same thing about the Switch. Yeah. Like, I'm also guessing that porting this game into Unity would be a very tremendous undertaking.
Yeah, unfortunately it would. When I first started developing Glow, I didn't want to get caught up too long in trying to pick the right game engine, because I thought I could spend months doing that. So I thought, I'll pick a game engine I'm comfortable with and I'll go with it. In hindsight, had I have realized the work that it might have involved having to port a game to another engine, I might have taken a little bit more time to think about that. Because it doesn't seem like it should take a long time. But, I mean, just the code language, just the language differences for one, it means I'd essentially have to rewrite everything from scratch, because Unity uses C# or JavaScript, and Game Maker Studio uses GML, which is like its own proprietary kind of simplified coding language. And it's great. I love GML. It's fun to use, and it lets you code really quickly, but it just means you can't comfortably convert it to another game engine.
Right. Well, I suppose there's no use for Lamentations, since it's coded in what it's coded.
Yeah, exactly. That's right. And I'm really pleased with what I achieved with Glow. Being my first game, my first commercial game, my first PC game, it's something I've been able to. I aim to complete that development in 3 months, which I managed to achieve. It enabled me to start to speak to people from the community. I was able to go and present it at a gaming convention here in the UK, which just was a fantastic experience and opened up a completely different world to me. And it's let me build a community of people that genuinely feel like friends to me right now, and that's all because of Glow, and be able to speak to people about it, and the passion that it's built in me for game development. So, I mean, it would be great to be able to port it to lots of other platforms and to try and make it as successful as possible. But the biggest success for me with Glow was always going to be to put my foot in the door and be able to comfortably feel like a game developer, which it's achieved for me. And it's an achievement which, if you'd asked me this time a year ago, I probably wouldn't have believed you that I'd be able to create a PC game. And now, a year on, I'm working on my second game, and I feel comfortable now as a game developer. And so for that, I've enjoyed every single second of making Glow.
Right. And speaking of computer platforms, is this game only on Windows, or is it Mac and Linux as well?
It's currently only on Windows. I am planning on releasing it for Mac and Linux. I don't actually have a Mac of my own, so I need to get in touch with one of my friends so then I can borrow a Mac for a while and start to test it on there. I don't want to just build it and just release it and then end up finding out there's loads of issues with it on Mac or Linux. Obviously, that wouldn't be good for anybody. So I want to get some good time to dedicate to sit down and do some testing on it with a Mac and then a Linux, and hopefully release an updated version later on.
Indeed. And I believe we reviewed this game last year.
That's right, yeah.
I don't remember having kind things to say about it.
Yeah, I must admit it was a difficult review to listen to. Yeah. But it's not for everybody. It's the type of game where I think it polarizes some people. Some of the negative comments I've had about it, funnily enough, have been quite complimentary, even though maybe that wasn't the point of them. Somebody had messaged me who was going to put a negative review out, and was actually kind enough. They'd said to me, I want to speak to you first, and if you don't want me to put the review out, let me know. But I said to them, look, I don't want to be controlling the views of anyone's opinions. I want an honest view of my work to be out there. So I said, it's entirely up to you what you put out there, but I appreciate you speaking to me. And when they put the review out and I read it, they'd complained and they said it was it highlighted a lot of things that they didn't like in computer games, and they explained it by referring to it reminding them too much of games like VVVVV, or however many V's is in that game. I think shortened to Spikes, and Thomas Was Alone, and some of the other maybe more difficult platformers. They even referred to Super Meat Boy. And that, for me, then when I read that review, made me realize, okay, fair enough, this is somebody who just doesn't enjoy those types of games. But the fact that they even thought of those other games, which for me are phenomenal games that I really do enjoy and I have taken inspiration from, the fact that they referred to those games was the positive for me, if that makes sense.
It does. And I suppose before we continue, Galix, do you have any questions about this game since you have to depart early?
Not much right now. I wish I'd actually had time to try it again, but the interview jumped up on me a little bit. Yeah, I vaguely remember playing this, and yeah, I guess it seems like I get what you're getting at, wanting to have stuff be a mystery to find, but I feel like that's something that has a limited appeal to a lot of people who want to be more in control of what they're doing.
Yeah. No, I can understand that. I certainly think it's a niche audience that it appeals to, and it is definitely a polarizing game. And the thing is as well, I mean, I do understand and I completely sympathize that the landscape to which I'm now entering the world as a game developer and the world into which Glow was released is a completely different world than it was, let's say, 10 years ago. And
there are lots of indie platformers, and
yeah, I know it's and there's a lot of games that are just put out there that appear to maybe not have a lot of passion behind them, or maybe just thrown out there quickly to make a quick buck. So I understand it's difficult for people to see all games and maybe understand what really goes behind what that person's intent was when releasing the game. And that's maybe like I say, polarized by the fact that, or exaggerated by the fact that it is quite a niche game as well. But it does mean that when people like it, they love it, which has been good.
Indeed. Now, before we continue on, we have a couple of trailers to play. One for Glow and one for your upcoming game, Gym Empire.
Cool.
All right. Give me half a second.
You should have to get a little bit of positioning before we play these.
Yep. All right. I
and-
think we're ready.
All right, proceed then.
Want me to play them both one after another?
Yes. Right. So obviously that provides a transition into your next game, which is a big departure from Glow, Gym Empire.
I was gonna say I'm not sure this could be more different than Glow if it really tried.
I know, tell me about it. Eh? Not only from an aesthetic point of view, but I'll tell you right now, from a game development point of view, it's a massive departure as well.
I can imagine, like, because yeah, if you missed the trailer, this is a tycoon game where you are trying to become the best gym owner you can be.
I will admit that's a new one for the tycoon, I guess, genre?
Possibly, but given the kinds of tycoon games that already exist, this may have been explored already. I mean, seriously, we've got like Lemonade Tycoon and Water Park Tycoon. We've got 4 prison tycoon games.
We have Esports Tycoon.
Yeah, I'm like, we've got YouTuber Life, which is what it says on the tin. Like it's
all the game dev ones. You've got the airport ones.
Yeah, it's like so.
Yeah, lots of tycoons.
Yeah, it's like this may be original, this may be not. I would not discount there being a gym tycoon or something along those lines. But I suppose that belies my first question. How did you arrive at making a gym tycoon game?
Okay, yeah. So 2 reasons, two things brought me to making a gym tycoon game. First of all, I absolutely love tycoon games, and I always will, and I always said I would make games that I love and I'd love to play. And I've got a wide variety of games that I love, from old school platformers to story-driven games, RPGs, and tycoon games. So tycoon games were one of those types of genres that always really relaxed me when I played them. So I could sit down for hours and just build something, and the time would just melt away. And it was just always quite therapeutic and relaxing. So tycoon games to me are always quite special, and they've got almost like a romance to them in terms of the worlds that they create and the world that you feel that you're in when you're playing them. And one of my actually recent favorite games, funnily enough, was one that ended up coming to mobile in the end, and it was Game Dev Story, which was by Kairosoft. I'm not sure if you've come across those. Yeah. Kairosoft games. Yeah. And I love the simplicity of it, and I love the humor of it as well. It brought back humor in the game that I hadn't really felt since the Theme Hospital games. So that was the first thing. A tycoon game to me is something quite special, and like I say, is a really enjoyable experience. On top of that, though, over the past 3-4 years, as I get older, I'm trying to look after my health a bit more, and I've started getting into physical fitness a little bit more. And as I mentioned with the game development podcasts and GDC talks, I find that my motivation is driven a lot by triggers around me. So things that I'm watching, things that I'm listening to, will put topics to the forefront of my mind, and it will make me then want to go home and do those things and work on those things, etc. And one of the podcasts that's really I found really motivating over the past few years that I've listened to is he's a fitness trainer actually of Triple H, the wrestler. And he's called Joe DeFranco. And his story is one whereby he started off in a 12 square foot storage closet, training people, and built his way up to become one of the world's leading fitness instructors, if you like. And that story inspired me quite a lot because it was a story of motivation. And when I've started in my game development career, starting from nothing, I'm starting to appreciate now the hard work that goes into not just game development or building a fitness business, anything that you do. I think with the internet now, we seem to think that things just happen, and you put a YouTube video out and you become a millionaire. But the reality is, it's time, effort, dedication, and that story really inspired me quite a lot. So I just thought to myself, that would be a great story that would sit alongside a tycoon type game, which made me then come to the idea of Gym Empire.
Well, it's good that you've managed to combine two of your passions, and
I think that's important, to be honest. I think anything you do, you've got to be passionate about, and if you pick things that you think you're going to do it just for the money, even though people might just be money that they are passionate about, but if you pick things that you're passionate about, that's what's going to get you out of bed every morning. That's what's going to let you put an hour in here for your lunchtime and everything, and keep you motivated. It's got to be stuff you're passionate about, I think.
Mm-hmm. Well, we can certainly relate, since that's a big thing that fuels this very show, not just on our end, but the people we usually have on the program.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like, I'll admit, we've had the occasional corporate mouthpiece from time to time, but by and large, the people who show up here are genuinely passionate about games.
Exactly. And you guys put out a lot of podcasts, don't you? You don't take it easy, so you understand what it's like to... There's never a time, I guess, that you guys aren't thinking about this. There's never a time that you guys aren't planning or waking up thinking about video games or the next podcast. And it's a dedication, but it becomes a little bit easier when it's something that you're passionate about.
This is true. This is very true. I mean, I'm not sure how much of the show you've listened to, but yeah, we put out at least 3 episodes, maybe 4 a week. Like,
yeah. I've listened to you guys quite a bit since I first came onto you last year, actually.
Oh, like, are you subbed to the channel?
I'm not, unfortunately, through Twitch.
Yeah. It's like we record this through Twitch, and then it goes to YouTube. Like, but
I watch mostly through YouTube, to be honest. I've subbed you on YouTube.
Oh, neat. Like, yeah, it's like more people are like, we usually promote the Twitch side of things because this is where we broadcast and all that.
Yeah.
But anyway,
I find it difficult to tune in on live things. So that's why I use YouTube mostly for my stuff I can pick up.
Well, it's like, I mean, we put them on YouTube for that and archival purposes. Now, we've had a few problems with episodes disappearing, so we'd like to make sure that they're available. It's like we lost one recently, but you know, what can you do? Anyway, so you've mentioned that Gym Empire is a radical departure in terms of developments. Can you elaborate?
Right. Yeah, so with Glow, I knew what I wanted to do, but I knew I had a lot of foundational understanding to put in to developing a game. And so a lot of the effort in Glow was just understanding some basics and best practices in terms of animation, collision detection, all those basics of game development. But there was no part of it, I guess, that I didn't think I'd be able to do. And I could see in 3 months everything I had to do to get to that end point. With Gym Empire, I dove in headfirst, all pumped up from having just completed my first game, and I thought, okay, it's going to be a much harder, much more difficult game to make. It's going to be in a 3D environment, so I chose Unity. But I wasn't prepared for that first month of feeling like I was literally starting from scratch again. I had a whole new game engine to understand. It uses a language I'm familiar with, C#, so that eased the difficulty a little bit. But the whole ecosystem of Unity and how it works and how I get an object to interact with the world compared to how I would in Game Maker Studio, it was just literally like starting from scratch again, having to climb that mountain. And as I progressed over the months, it got a little bit easier. And I'd say in February this year, I finally got to that point again where I felt, okay, I now know what I'm doing in terms of where I can see the type, what type of task effort I can expect to see over the next 6 months. And for me, that was the first hard part in those first 3 months. I couldn't paint the roadmap, if you like, from beginning to end. And it felt literally like I was driving in the dark. And I found that really difficult. I was always making progress. Things were moving on, but it was difficult for me to not be able to predict how long this was going to take and what was going to be involved in it. And like I say, in February, I finally got to that comfort zone where, once again, I knew there were things that I had yet to learn, but everything that I thought I needed to learn and so far I've been comfortable with, and I know I will be able to achieve that eventually. And that's kind of where I'm at now. But there's just so many more layers to a tycoon game than there is a platform game, as I'm sure you can understand. Platform game is essentially, especially a 2D one, create your environment, sort your physics out and your collision. There are basics, your core basics, and then you then start to build the world and maybe make it more interesting with what you have to do in that environment. With a tycoon game, there's so many systems you need to have in place. Client systems, for example, in Gym Empire, client systems, the money systems, all these algorithms that need to work under the surface that don't really create any visual output other than numbers at the beginning. Don't allow for a lot of interaction at first, and you need to get all these things in place as a foundation before you can even really start creating that visual experience of a computer game. And it's difficult. It is difficult, but it's been really rewarding though as well. When you finally get to that part where you can start to see clients moving in, you see this world that you've been building actually live in, that's when it all starts to click and become worthwhile.
And given that you're developing this game in Unity, are you shining an eye to have this game on mobile / like the Switch as well?
Absolutely. I definitely am aiming for the Switch, PC, Mac, Linux. I'm focusing on PC to start with, get that core foundational game experience sorted, and then next we'll be looking at the Switch and possible other console options. I will look at mobile, but I'm going to hold off mobile to start with, just because of the oversaturation of tycoon games currently. I don't want any part of the game to be influenced by mobile. I want it to be a game that feels every bit like a PC tycoon game that works on a mobile, rather than the other way around, if you know what I mean. Because I personally feel that the tycoon games on mobiles have in some way kind of dumbed down the whole tycoon experience a little bit for me. They've taken away a little bit of that, as I was referring to before, that immersion that that I used to feel in old tycoon games.
That makes sense. Granted, I'm not that familiar with the mobile market and how many tycoon games there are, but I do know not only would you have to change like the development, but the pricing models.
Exactly, yeah.
No.
I think it would almost be expected that I would have to put a whole pricing system in there. Tycoon games that I've seen on mobile that don't employ that mechanism, even though they're great games, just don't seem to gain any interest. Although a lot of people maybe complain about the whole pricing of mobile games, I think people have become so used to that now. That's what they expect, and if it isn't like that, people just don't seem to be as interested.
That's pretty much what I've heard from other developers in that space. It's unfortunate, but it's just how the market aligned.
Exactly, yeah.
Anyway, how much more do you think you have to do on GM Empire before you have a release candidate?
So, I think a game like GM Empire will work. Should work nicely with an early access release. Mm-hmm. And another temptation for early access for me is that with GM Empire, I really want it to be a game that the community has helped to build. I think now these days those are the best tycoon games. Startup Company is a game that was released last year. I'm not sure if you've seen that one on Steam, and that's one that came out on early access and has greatly benefited from the community interaction. It's just changed so much so quickly. It was a great game when it came out, but it's just grown so much. So I want to get it to an early access state whereby it's going to have all the features I originally planned it to have. I want it to be a full game experience that I originally set out. Over the past few months, I've been trying to reach out to the community a lot more and build that kind of relationship. And I've been getting a lot of feedback in terms of ideas that people would like to see in it. And I want those ideas to be the ones that are built on during early access. I think the end of the year is when I'm planning to have it at that full complete game and experience point. But prior to that, I want it to get a beta version built as well, that I can get. I've got a Discord, and through the Discord, everyone will have access to a beta build, and I want that to be a tool whereby they can not just provide input in terms of what they'd like to see in a game like this. I want them to provide real-time feedback on the experience that they're having. So I want to try and get a beta release out, hopefully by the end of summer.
How much do you think you'll be charging in early access?
Originally, I've been looking around about the. I'll be talking in pounds, by the way. Sorry.
Okay.
£8 to £10. So yeah, actually maybe dollars. Actually, I was looking at about $10 for an early access build.
Like that seems reasonable.
I mean, I've still yet to do a lot of the research on pricing yet. That'll be something I look closer to the time. But originally, and looking at some of the existing early access games, that's what I'm originally pitching at.
Once again, I couldn't speak to we featured a few Tycoon games on the program, but not many. So, the previous one wasn't actually a Tycoon game. It was a grand strategy game. But other Arcade Craft we featured a few years ago was $10. So yeah, that seems to be a good price for what you're developing here. At least
I want it to be. Sorry, go.
At least that from our vantage point.
Cool. Yeah. And I want it to be the type of game that you don't just play through for, let's say, 8 hours and you've completed it and then you're done. I think games like that, especially indie games, are the ones that maybe warrant the lower price tags. I want it to be a game whereby each time you play it, you can pick different scenarios. One of the gameplay styles I'm aiming for is when you start to move out of your actual storage closet or your garage. You've got a range of options as to what type of premises you could move to. You could pick ones which maybe are cheaper but have limited options for expanding, or you could have ones which are pricier, maybe more of a city location, but that price will enable you to maybe have more visibility of clients walking past on the street. And then even little intricate details like, is the gym located next to a donut shop or something like that? And that could be something whereby when a client leaves the gym, if they go straight to the donut shop, then all the hard work they've put in is kind of negated by that fact. And then that will have a knock-on effect as to how people see your gym, because if they see that clients aren't getting gains, if you like, then maybe people are less interested. So I want all those little things to come into play. And I want that to be the type of experience that you come back each time and you can forge a different path. And I think a game like that is one where you can sink a lot more hours into it and warrants it being a little bit more, slightly higher price tag.
Yeah, I could see that. Right, so any other questions on Gym Empire here?
Not that I can think of.
All right. Well, I think that'll about do it for this interview. Now,
Cool.
Stav, it was wonderful having you on the program.
Thank you. It's been absolutely brilliant being on here. Thank you very much.
Indeed. I believe this was your first interview as a game developer.
Absolutely, yeah. To be honest, most things in my game development career are firsts right now. So it's been really exciting. I won't lie, a little bit nervous coming into it, but it's been really enjoyable. It's been great.
Indeed. Well,
can I just throw one thing out there? Actually, I run challenges on my Discord, and I was thinking just before coming on, a great challenge will be to see if any of my Discord listeners have been listening, and if they have, then the next challenge you can post in the general channel fragments of silicone rocks, and you'll win the next challenge.
All right. Well, I'm sure you'll post this to your social media followers when we get the the syndicated version cut and all that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Which at most would be a couple days from now. It all depends on Pettyfan here.
Yep. I will try and get it done soon, but I also have yard work to do.
We're all. I sympathise with that.
Yeah, we do have things to do in the interim, but
yeah, there is a real life out there.
Wait, there is? Hold on. I didn't sign up for this.
Yeah, apparently you can access it through Google if you want.
Right, so that'll about do it for this installment of Fragments of Silicon. Be sure to tune in tomorrow for our main show, broadcasting at a special time, 7 o'clock p.m., 4 o'clock Pacific, because it is the 4th of July, and, you know, people have things to do during the evening. But anyway, we will be having James Montagna of Way Forward Technologies on the program, and I'm looking forward to this. I think I mentioned on Sunday, but I'll mention it here as well. This interview could take the entirety of the broadcast because Way Forward Technologies has done a lot of stuff, and we may need the entire space to cover it.
Haven't we been trying to get this interview since Half-Genie Hero Kickstarter started?
Maybe before then. Like, you know, it's like I tried through the front door, but that didn't work out. So it's good to have connections. Like,
networking is important.
Yes. Anyway, until tomorrow, I wish you good gaming.